What's up, everybody? My name is Cody Yard, and I am the host of The Buzz with the Fuzz. It's Apple Valley's Police Department podcast. We're going to do some fun stuff with this thing. We're going to do chatting with the chief. We're going to do some Q&As, and we're going to do some longer format podcasts where we sit down with folks from specialty units, and you guys get to learn about who they are and what they do. I got my start in journalism back in 2002 as a combat correspondent in the United States Marine Corps. Really excited to be the host of this podcast here with the police department, and I'm really looking forward to bringing you some new fun facts and information that you might not know about Apple Valley's police department. So stick around, buckle up, and let's have some fun. Welcome back, folks. Today I have a guest on the podcast with me who is my K9 partner, and we are going to talk all things K9. Alex, please introduce yourself.
So, thank you, Cody. My name is Alex Witkowski. I'm the other K9 handler here in town. I have a almost 3-year-old Dutch Shepherd. Name is Moose. We've been on the road for about a year and a half so far.
Let's get the important thing out of the way. What is Moose's favorite treat?
Salmon.
I like the way you put the hard L in there. Salmon.
Loves the freeze-dried salmon. The L wouldn't be there if I wasn't supposed to say it.
You and I went to the conference, the Region 12 USPCA K9 Handlers Conference down in Mankato back in February.
Yep.
And ton of great information from the speakers. And I walked out of that conference going, I feel like the dumbest person in K9.
It's amazing how quickly you learn how much you don't know. So many good concepts, so many aha moments in K9. A lot of things you learn, and you really wish you could go back in time and take another crack at something that you've certainly missed in the past and come up with some new tactics, new things to look for, new things to watch for.
Yeah, because it's really, when you try to fix something with your dog, inevitably you're creating a pattern of behavior that you're looking for, but in doing so, there's the potential to screw up this pattern over here that you also want.
Yep.
But then you have to go back and fix it.
It's almost like you only have one thing squared away at a time.
Yeah.
If we go out and we notice that we're having some, maybe some issues or some performance issues in, tracking, for example, we go out and we just hammer tracking. And that's all we focus on. That's all we worry about. That's, in my opinion, probably the most important part of K9 is tracking. It's a locating tool. Looking for things. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're looking for drugs. They're looking for people. They're looking for items, guns, evidence, whatever you can find. So perfect example is, especially this time of year, you get really, really heavy into tracking and focus on getting your dog out. And, basically part of tracking is your dog just pulls as hard as he can and takes you to where he wants to go. Takes you to the suspect, follows the person, and does the thing. Well, that takes your general obedience and throws it straight out the window. Because now every time we're on leash, it's, Dad, I want to pull. Right. We're going to go this way. So, I can either have a dog that's walks pretty on leash and, looks good when we walk through the neighborhood, or I can have a dog that can track. Trying to teach an animal, there's a difference between the two. I mean, in his eyes, it looks the same. I'm hooked up to a leash and I'm ready to go.
And so why is it important to have the dog pull as hard as they can for you when they're tracking?
It's really kind of an indication of that I'm really doing the thing. If the dog isn't committed and they're kind of, they're questioning themselves and they don't really know if they're on that odor, if they don't know if they're really following the scent track there, they really don't pull quite as hard versus when they do. I mean, there's a distinct change in behavior when they are on odor, and they start donkey kicking. Moose is a monster of a dog. He's huge, and he's got giant feet, and he'll actually shred the grass and kick grass up and hit me with dirt and grass and stuff when he really commits to that track and buckles down, and you got a 92-pound monster pulling you as hard as he can. That shows and indicates that he's actually on odor, and he's actually on the track.
Yeah.
And then as he starts losing that track, he starts slowing down. He stops pulling so hard. And, there's a bunch of things that you're watching for. He kind of picks his head up and starts looking around and doing some different stuff. And that's when it's my turn to step in and I need to start doing the work. So when there's an active track going, he's doing the work. When there is no active track, it's my turn to do the work.
Sure. What do you mean by it's your turn to do the work?
So there's a lot of different patterns and stuff that you have to follow. So as they're pulling along, doing the thing, he's actually telling you something. So to kind of backstep this a little bit, Cody and I both went through McDonough K9. I went back through fall of 22, and you went through
fall of 2020.
Fall of 2020. So we both went through the same course, and kind of the way that I put it to our partners is Cody and I went through, my class was 14 and a half weeks. I think yours was a little shorter.
14
yep.
weeks.
I went through a 14 and a half week course basically learning how to read my dog, reading the signs that reading what he's telling me. So It's really easy, and if you don't know, you don't know, but Moose has some really good tells. When Moose is on order and he's actually smelling the thing that he's looking for, his tail goes up over his back and he kind of scorpion tails. He kind of fans his tail out a little bit and he scorpions. And he starts doing the real deep breathing, and like a lot of this is pretty universal for a lot of dogs, and a lot of dogs do very similar things. Moose looks different working than Virgil looks when he's working.
Yeah.
So
right.
I spent, initially 14 weeks in that class, and then the last year and a half on the road of just learning what my dog is telling me. We tell our partners all the time, it's your job to watch the surroundings. It's your job to, provide cover. It's your job to, assess the situation and relay that information to us. It's my job, and the reason you're here as my cover officer is because I'm watching my dog and I'm reading what he's telling me. Right. So, again, I've spent, I could go back at my logs and calculate the amount of hours I've spent playing with, training, learning, living with this dog. I have gotten very good at reading my dog versus, he's doing things that your average person would look at and would have no idea what he's doing. They would never pick up the significance of what he's showing you.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuances to reading the dog. Yeah, and that is why it's important for cover officers when we're tracking to keep their eyes up, because we are looking at those dogs. To put it bluntly, right? Perimeters catch people, dogs just help. We need to be able to catch up to that person and push them to the perimeter cars. Mm-hmm. And then in order to do that safely, that is why we have those cover guys there with us, because if we have our dog out, typically we don't have guns out because it takes 2 hands to run the leash.
Sometimes it takes 4 hands to run the leash.
Yeah, if you've got a dog like yours. It's interesting because Virgil has turned a corner. He turned 5 last week on the 16th, and he has really just kind of settled down. It's interesting because I've had to turn the light on in the back of the squad, and you're still back there. Okay, cool. I thought somebody let you out and didn't put you back.
Yeah, he went from 1 brain cell to 2, and
and is weird because since 2020, since we hit the road working together, I have done nothing but asked him to shut up. Right? And now all of a sudden I'm like, hey dude, are you still alive back there?
That's where the salmon bites come in.
Yeah, and you need salmon. I need more salmon bites. If you look at my right sleeve of my uniform shirt, it is constantly covered in drool. Yep.
And my pants are always brown because
dogs are rubbing up on you. Yep. That's just how they play.
Every day, it's funny. Every time Moose lives he's got a 12-foot by 6-foot run built into the basement of the house. And every single time I get him out of that, you'd think he won the lottery. It's the single greatest thing that's ever happened. He comes out, and I like to personify my dog. And, Dad, are you telling me that we're going to go to work?
Yeah, right?
So you got this 92-pound ball of muscle spinning as fast as he can. And, he plays with his hands. He plays with his mouth. And, I wouldn't have it any other way because it's so much fun to have we have a wrestling match every day. It's just funny the caliber of dogs that they're giving us these days, and the amount of energy and drive and focus that they have.
How many dogs do you have?
This is an embarrassing admission. 4. 4 is enough. That's enough dogs.
Do you have a kennel license for that?
I live outside of city limits, so.
Okay. Well, then you're fine.
Yeah,
they're all farm dogs.
I quite literally live on a farm, so it's perfect.
So you have 4 dogs.
4.
Moose is one of those. So you have 3 pets, and Moose is your working dog. The people that might dial up this podcast don't know this, but so you had 2, you got Moose, and now you've gotten Puppy again to make your 4th.
Yep.
So how did you integrate Moose in with the older 2, and then how did you integrate Puppy in with Moose and older 2?
So we had the 2 older dogs. We've got Tank is 10, Duke is 6, and life was good. 2 dogs is the right amount of dogs to have in a house. And then I got the opportunity for K9, tons of long conversations with, a bunch of people that I view as mentors, family, friends. At the time of applying, at the time of getting the dog, I decided that was kind of the time. It was a good point in my life without getting super personal on it. Just timing was right. So put in for it, and I integrated Moose, the working dog, the K9, into the mix here. And the integration with him was fairly simple. It was ultimately what it comes down to is Moose is so big, so playful, and so energetic that he doesn't integrate well with old dogs.
Sure.
So he has so much energy. He can coexist with the other dogs, but it's very structured as far as what that looks like. They're about half his size, and he doesn't know his size. He doesn't know how energetic he is, and he doesn't grasp the concept of play. necessarily. His form of play is a very rough and tough type of play. So the integration with the two older dogs is fairly simple. Obviously they're always monitored and they're always being watched, but they don't get to go out and just run and play and do the thing. It was really, 7 months after that, when we got Yeti, our puppy, and kind of same thing when we introduced the puppy to Moose. Moose is kind of the same way of, this is a toy, this is fun, and sure, the puppy's 7 pounds, but I want to play with her like she's my size. So same thing, super structured, very on leash, always on positive control of the dogs, like giving them force and breaks and stuff like that, and just kind of doing a slow introduction to get them used to each other. Well, Yeti wants to be the boss now, so she's the big dog in the house, and so those two can go out and they can play and they can roughhouse and do the thing. And it's funny because Yeti's probably 55, 60 pounds or so, and Yeti plays like she's the biggest, baddest dog around. So Yeti will come flying in across the yard and just body check Moose. Well, Moose don't move, right? He's 3 times her size, and he's got everything all figured out. He's coordinated, and Yeti's still got that awkward teenage phase. And no, it's been super fun watching them work. Moose is kind of understanding now, where he's getting to be a lot more gentle and plays a lot better. And it's a lot of fun to have them all be friends and hang out and do the thing.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing about the canines, like the working dogs now, right? Is like they have a very distinct switch of I can turn it on. I know when I'm going to work. I know when I'm coming out to play. A lot of that has to do with socially how they're raised. I think about canines of the past where they had one job, which was get them out of the car, put them to work, put them back in the car, and that's just where they live. It's cool to see the evolution of the canines and see how well they have adjusted to some of this family life. And you can find it all over Instagram. These folks are sharing photos of their dogs playing with their children and stuff like that. And while they are very good at what they do in terms of when to have that switch turned on and when to have that turned off, and that's a pretty cool balance to see.
And a really cool example of that, it was our first real deployment. It was a weapon pointing incident, uncooperative parties in the car. We find the car, stop it, block it in. We do a high-risk stop on it. And 3 occupants, none of which are cooperating. They're yelling. So I got there a little late in the game. Our partners had already kind of established the scene at that point, and we're really kind of in a standoff with the occupants of this car. And like I said, the information that we had was they had pointed a gun and they were shooting at like holiday decorations. Interesting. Turns out they did have a gun. Turns out they were shooting at stuff. It was kind of an interesting dynamic. But anyways,
was it an airsoft gun or was it an actual?
I think it was a BB gun. Okay, sorry. I should have clarified that. Yeah,
it's all good.
Yep. So but anyways, at the time, like we didn't know that, right?
Yeah,
that wasn't the information that we had been portrayed, and we get a lot of stuff like that. But anyways, I get the dog out. We're all stacked up behind our cars. I get Moose out. We're giving announcements. We're giving commands for these people to get out of the car. They're being uncooperative. They're yelling at us, and they're not doing the thing. So I get the dog out, and I get him to start barking. So he's barking at these people in the car. Well, the moment he starts barking is the moment we gain 100% compliance and cooperation from the people. So it's amazing how much of a de-escalation tool he is. And you may not look at it that way, but realistically, the alternate was to start using some less lethal tools and, escalating things on our end to get this to a peaceful resolution so nobody gets hurt. So I got Moose out, gained almost immediate compliance from these individuals. They start coming out. We call them out of the car, bring them back to us. Well, Moose is he's in a down, so he's laying down on the ground. One of the gentlemen that got out of the car escorted back behind the cars. Well, as he comes around the corner, I just happened to look over at him, and you could just see the terror in his eyes. As he came around the corner and he saw that dog, it was, I don't want any piece of that. I'm over this, right? The dog did his job. He de-escalated the situation. We got these people out. The funny part of this, and I recognize that was kind of a heavy story, but the funny part of this is the very next day, I went out of town for a family gathering for the holidays. Went out of town, we were staying at a hotel. So Moose doesn't come up into the bedroom. He comes up into the house, but he doesn't go into the bedroom. So we're in this hotel room, and at this point, like he's seen beds before. He's been in bedrooms before, but he never saw what beds are for. Like he didn't realize that Dad lays in this and hangs out in this. Yeah. So I'm laying in bed. He's just hanging out with us in the hotel room. He sees his window of opportunity. Well, I can jump up on that bed. So he hops up on the bed. So he flops over onto his back, and he's getting belly rubs, and he's licking me, like just tails wagging. This is the best day of my life. So it's amazing to go back that on-off switch. He can go from so intent with what he's doing to literally the very next day he's just a regular dog, just a big puppy laying on his back getting belly rubs, hanging out, doing the thing.
Yeah, it's just very cool to see. I think that we've both been very lucky with our dogs in terms of how well they adjust to those situations. It could be where it's a constant battle. Some dogs will constantly challenge their handler to be alpha. I don't know why that would be. For me and Virgil, I establish that I'm alpha and you're the dude that's just going to hang out here and do what I tell you to. But the cool part about it is that we've morphed that into hey, I'd really like you to do this work for me, Burge. And he's like, hey, I really want to do that work for you, dude.
Yeah.
And
it's funny too, just the way they view the world. I personify my dog, but in Moose's eyes, I am the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, the smartest, the single greatest being on the face of this planet. The bond that we have with these dogs and the relationships that we have with them, to your point, is not only, they don't come out of the car because they know that they're going to get punished if they don't do what they're asked. They come out of the car and they're so excited to do anything because everything's a game. Apprehension and bite work is just a big game for him. It's the most fun game. It's his favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
In the way that they're, to very oversimplify it, when I send him into a room or send him around some cars or send him somewhere to go locate narcotics, he's not looking for the drugs necessarily. He is, and that's what, he knows that that's where it's coming from. But the way that his brain works is when I find methamphetamine and I provide a final alert, I get a reward. So you think about it that way. If he was just going in looking for drugs so he could sit down and show me where it is, that's not fun. But we've created this relationship with searching for drugs, and we've created this game out of it. And it's funny to watch. My dog in particular, he gets so excited that he almost can't control himself.
Yeah.
Does, and he can. The meth isn't the exciting part. The tug or the Kong or whatever he's getting for
whatever's coming next.
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to watch dogs work when they want to work.
Right. What is your favorite part about K9?
I've got a couple of, I guess I'm going to give you two answers to this. On a personal level, I drive around all day with my best friend in the car. And when I get in the car, he's going to stand up and he's going to come up and put his nose on my shoulder and just say, what's up, Dad?
Yeah.
And it's just so much fun to have just to have your buddy, give him some pets and give him some love. Going back to the drool on the shoulder, my right shoulder and arm is currently brown. I wear dark blue, but it's brown because it's covered in dog. And it's just so much fun. You get off of a call that might be a little heavy on the heart or emotionally taxing. Well, I can go out and I can throw the ball for the dog and change things around. It's such a great outlet. There's truly nothing in this world quite like watching your dog work. It's so interesting. It's so entertaining. It's so remarkable that we have the relationship with these virtually wild animals. It's very primal, but it's a very controlled primal experience.
Yeah.
So
because they're a wolf at their very core. That's still where we're at. I mean, we're taking these dogs that we are harnessing their primal instinct, their prey drive mentality, and we are teaching them to use that based on a reward system. Then again, I watch these folks they'll do scent work dogs. Those competitions, to watch people take a small whatever dog and teach it to hunt for scent, they crush it. Yeah. And the interesting thing is some of those folks get their service dogs or their scent work dogs to do some amazing things that, I can't get Virgil to go near a floor drain because it smells weird or I don't know what.
Yep.
He just refuses to go by them. No matter how many times I dump food in, on, or around it, he will not go near it.
Yeah. And then the funny part is some of these people, these dog world people that have play dogs, really, they pseudo working dogs, but they'll take a Bashan or a Shih Tzu or a Dachshund, whatever, and then they'll go and they'll get so good and so proficient at whatever job they have them doing, whether it's barn hunt looking for rats, dock diving, whatever. It's to an extent it is the dog. You have to have the right dog that wants to work and wants to do the thing, but anybody can do it. If you if you really want to do it and you put your time, your energy into learning and training with your dog, your dog can be an absolute stud in whatever regard, whatever respect you want. And it's frustrating. 90% of issues with your dog are not the dog's fault.
Correct.
It's the handler's.
Yeah.
The handler's problem. It's the handler's fault.
Yeah, we're just the dumb one holding the end of the leash.
Exactly. It's Last night, perfect example, we're out doing a bunch of training dope, and it was an oversight on my side, and I didn't even, when we get our dogs out, before we ever get our dogs out of the car, we're always kind of assessing the situation to make sure that it's a safe environment for the dog, right? Mm-hmm. If we're going to go do a K9 narcotic sniff of a vehicle, we're going to go up and we're going to conduct a little roadside interview with the person and establish, like, is there anything that's going to hurt my dog in or around your car? And then we're going to take a look into the car. We're going to take a look around the car and make sure there isn't a storm drain that his foot could fall through. And
sand. You move your car 15 feet forward for me? My dog is not going to get near that.
But last night I was doing Fleet, the city Fleet vehicle. They have a little like glass cabbed electric cart thing. Mm-hmm. So I pulled that out last night, and I was hiding drugs around it and having the dog go and find it, and he's hammering it. He's doing phenomenal. Like, he's having a ton of fun. He's getting his reward. Like, life is good.
Yeah.
Well, the last rep we did, we kind of called it after this. He went to check high, so he jumped up into the bed, like halfway into the bed, because he desperately had to put his nose on the top of the car.
Yeah.
It's just naturally, it's probably there, so I should probably check that. So, well, he stepped on a garden rake, one of the metal garden rakes.
Oh, no.
And got his toe stuck between the rakes. So he's doing the, he wasn't hurt. Thankfully, he wasn't hurt. He was just doing the, absolute panic. And it's if I could talk to you and if you had reasoning abilities, I'd be like, hey, dude, just stop and I will fix this.
Yeah.
All is fine. I will fix this.
Yeah.
But no, it was, 30 seconds of just
sheer
him flailing and losing his mind. I'm trying to get this rake off of him and grab him and make sure he's safe and doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
Well, the funny part is the moment because eventually I just kind of grabbed him by the collar, pulled him to me, stabilized his foot, stopped it. It wasn't really stuck. It was just there. So I just moved the rake.
Yeah.
Ultimately his toe had gone between two of the prongs. That was the problem. I grabbed his paw, took the rake off. You know what he did immediately thereafter? He goes, "Oh, I found the drugs." Oh. And sat. So basically that portion never happened. Yeah. It was, this was an obstacle in my way. I need to sit for the drugs.
Yeah.
So it's just funny to see how dedicated they are to the cause and how badly they want to find the drugs and get the reward. And, then he gets his toy and I'm being super gentle because I want to make sure his paw's okay before we, get going. Mm-hmm. So I give him the ball, do the thing, and, we're playing and having a good time. Well, then I kind of picked him up and looked at his paw, and his paw's totally fine. No injuries, no nothing. But, and then he's kind of like, "Dad, this isn't how we play. You don't grab my paw when we play. Right. Grab that and we're going to tug. We're going to wrestle over this."
Yeah.
So just super funny how these dogs are so intent. He went from 30 seconds of sheer terror to, "Oh, by the way, look what I found."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah.
To redirect this a little bit, do you want to kind of go over the certifications they have and kind of just what they do? So our dogs are both certified under the NPCA, or the National Police Canine Association.
Yeah.
So it's a yearly certification that you have to obtain every year in order to continue to work the dog on the road and continue to deploy him as a police canine. We're super grateful to have some really great partners. That just to the south in Lakeville, we got a judge over there we've got a couple of judges in our training group that are super great, and they'll host a certification just for our training group, which is really great. Takes a lot of the stress out of it because I can just go to our neighboring city and certify there. Anyways,
we should say that there's no your dog passes or fails. There's no
correct.
There's no home field advantage.
Correct.
Right? The judges are fair, impartial in terms of if the dog performs or he doesn't perform. I mean, the canine world is a small world anyway. You know a lot of the people and you know a lot of the judges, and once you've been around, they start to know you, they know your dog. Some would say that some things can be subjective in terms of with USPCA, there's a lot more prettiness to the obedience portion in terms of how well did your dog heel? Did it stay with you? Was it engaged? Did it sit perfectly straight alongside you? And you get docked points for that stuff, which is cool. And then NPCA is a little bit more in terms of hey, you tell your dog to heel, you walk a pattern, you tell your dog to down. If he happens to heel a little bit crooked when he does his final sit or down or whatever that is, it's not a knock on you for points. It's just, hey, yeah, you passed because your dog did everything you asked him to do. Ultimately, the point here is that just because we have folks from our training group certifying us doesn't mean that our dogs are held to a different standard. They are held to the exact same standard as the National Police K9 Association would expect a working dog to be held to.
And almost to go one step further than that, like we overlap. I've been to every city in Dakota County. I've been outside of Dakota County for different canine deployments for different reasons. You almost have a higher level of standards because you know that my dog may be the one in the place of saving your partner's life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's being really, I don't want to call it being dramatic, but it's the severity of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Because our dogs they're not pulling us in a safe direction.
Correct.
Right? They're always looking for the bad person that committed a crime that's worthy of the possible physical apprehension, which is a bite. Yep. And so there's a reason we use them, because they give us the alerts and the indicators that they're close to another human being before we would ever know that they're close to another human being.
Yeah. Part of the NPCA, so it's a multi-part certification. So you start with obedience. We kind of alluded to that. It's basically general control of your dog off leash. Yep. Does your dog listen to you? Is he going to stay by your side and do what you ask him to do? Yes or no. Pass. You move on to the next thing. If you don't pass, if you don't have control over your dog, you're done for the day. Pack up your bags and go home. It's plain and simple. And it's as simple as, do you have control? Yes or no. From there, you go over to the apprehension work, which is kind of a similar deal. It's off lead, off leash. Do you have control over your dog? Can you send your dog to go get the apprehension? Is your dog going to engage? Can you recall your dog? So send him to get the bite and then call him back so he doesn't engage. And then there's something called the courage test, where you're kind of just testing to make sure that the dog is going to push through some adversity. From there, you go over and you do an area search. So it's exactly what it sounds like. They're searching the area. According to the NPCA, you have to have 8 vessels, I guess, that are large enough to fit a human being, and your dog has to go check these places to see if, to find the person.
Right.
Then your dog has to provide an alert, which is a bark. So your dog's going to start barking at and probably pawing at and trying to get into that container or vessel or whatever you guys are using. So it could be plywood boxes, it could be porta potties, or you name it, right? It's wide open. You can use whatever you want.
I hope we never use porta potties.
If we do, I hope they're clean. But the point stands, right? Your dog has to perform. And there's a couple of different ways you can run it as far as tactics goes, but the NPCA requires you use a level of tactics. So you either have to stay behind cover the entire time, or you have to move tactically with your dog from cover to cover. I send my dog off leash. I think it's kind of I can turn around and look at my partners that are watching me go and be like, see what my dog's doing? Pretty cool, right? But I have the confidence that my dog's going to do it. And I have the confidence he's going to come back afterwards.
Right.
Some dogs, they get so married to the location, to where the person is, that they're not coming back to you. Why would I? Dad, what I want is in here.
The reward is here.
Yeah.
You are not the reward. This is the reward over here.
Yeah. So then you go and you do basically the same thing, but inside of a building. Just do the building search portion. Dog has to go through a building and alert on the correct location where the person is. Same thing. They have to provide an alert, bark, come back to you. When your dog comes back to you, you're done. And then from there, you go straight into the narcotics portion. So you got to go search cars and then go search rooms. And your dog has to provide, I think it's 3 out of 4 fines passing.
Yeah. The USPCA trials for narcotics are a little bit different, because in past, at like a USPCA narcotics trial, I have been docked points because my dog was unstable on the alert, because he found it, then laid down or sat or whatever it was, but then barked. And according to the judges, that was instability. I would argue that is exactly the response that you want from your dog. Yeah. But Dave from Winnipeg, who does all our tracking stuff, one of the best lines he uses at his trainings is, or the only thing that 2 dog trainers can agree on is what the third one is doing wrong. Right? Yes. There's a lot of truth in that, because there's a bunch of ways that we can teach these dogs to do exactly what we want them to do. And what works for me and Virgil does not work for you and Moose. Yeah. The cool part about our training group, which the South Metro K9 training group is made up of all of the agencies in Dakota County that have canines. It's really nice to have so many people in our training group that are so knowledgeable. We've got guys that are running their 3rd dog. And that's a lot of experience there. The education part of K9, I think you can never have enough education when it comes to working dogs specifically.
And the cool part is, and this kind of touches on a couple of things we've already talked about, I have 40 different people on my contacts list that I can call and be like, hey, this is the issue that I'm having. And I can almost guarantee that 25 of them have seen the same problem I have. Yeah. They've experienced something similar. Yeah. And then they reached out to, 30, 40, 50 people that they know, and there's just a huge wealth of knowledge, and I know who to call to get an answer, right? And I really only had one real issue with Moose since we got out of K9 school. Thankfully, it has alleviated itself, but he would get so excited that he just started chomping his mouth, and whatever was in his way was in his way. It was me. I was in the way.
You were in the way a lot, huh?
Yeah. So
did Max show you the like his thing? Like, here's, like if you just take your hand and you put your fingers and your thumb together and you do this, and that's the dog's mouth, and you put your hand in there. Ow, 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 ow.
That sounds a lot like our conversation.
Did he tell you that you shouldn't put your hand in the dog's mouth start, or did you?
I thought that would have been a good thing for him to tell me, maybe the day that I got the dog from him.
That's a self-correcting problem, though. Right? Hands away from the bitey end.
But the cool part is I experienced this issue, and it really was a one-day issue. For whatever reason, he decided that Thursday morning was the day that he was going to start chomping his mouth, and whatever was there was there. Nothing serious.
Yeah.
Right? He wasn't biting me. He wasn't attacking me. There was no malice in it. It was just, I'm so excited. I don't know what to do, and my mouth is going.
Yeah.
So he ended up nipping my arm a couple of times, and kind of no big deal. Okay, well, you don't get the ball today. Was the response to that if you're gonna nip me, then you're not gonna get a ball. So went and put him away. Called Mac up. Hey Mac, this is what I'm going through. Like, do you have any ideas for me? What are you doing tomorrow? Come to class. He had a class going at the time.
Yeah.
Come to class tomorrow. I want to see it. I want to see what's going on. Got up to class. Well, Moose was an absolute stellar stud. Literally no issues. Like he outed perfectly. He performed perfect on all the scenarios. Like, just for whatever reason, that day was the day that he was going to get mouthy and start just hanging out. So
yeah.
Self-correcting problem.
He probably started to get the shakes, though, going up to McDonough's class. Right? Like, oh, boy, I know this drive.
That old man's grumpy. No, it's super cool to have somebody with such an amazing wealth of knowledge that I can call literally 24/7, 365. Anything from as small as a conversation up to, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I got going on, and then just the open invitation where I can go back and train.
Yeah, I know my answer to this, but what was the hardest thing coming out of K9 school for you?
Figuring out what my role was, as far as what do I get involved in, what do I work on, what happens next. I guess was the big thing, right? It was K9 school was so structured, and it was very challenging, it was mentally, physically, emotionally challenging, because 14 weeks is a long time. It was a long, exhausting experience. But coming out of school, and you just kind of have this blessing of like, you are now a K9 handler.
Yeah, right.
Go do it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I don't know how to be a K9 handler.
My first shift back to the road, I was like, I don't have any idea what I'm doing.
Exactly. Your first deployment on everything. My first ever K9 sniff was over in Hastings. Hastings officer developed a reasonable suspicion to sniff the car, and I drove from Apple Valley to Hastings. The entire drive over there, I'm like, this is it. Like, this is it. This is what we're here for. Get out there. Get the dog out, run him for a narcotic sniff, and he alerts on the car. And I'm like,
did we just find 700 pounds of meth in this vehicle?
Yeah. So now what? Now what do I do?
Yeah.
Reward him, put him back in the car, do the thing. And I'm standing there eagerly like, what'd you find? What'd you find?
Yeah.
It was a user amount of meth.
Right.
It was not the bust of the century, but it was just such a, like, I'm on cloud nine. This is the coolest thing I've ever done.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm the hero today.
Well, Moose was the hero.
Yeah, but I want to take credit for it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
And then, on the way back, I pulled up on our computer system. We can look up other handlers and see who else is working. So I just went through and I'm like, who's working? I have to tell somebody. This is awesome.
Yeah.
So I called West St. Paul and had a conversation with Nikki about, this is what I just did. It was awesome. And then same thing with tracking. Our first ever track was relatively unwinnable. It was -5 degrees, 30-mile-an-hour winds on a hard surface in a parking lot. There's people walking everywhere. It was in Burnsville, and Burnsville was all tied up on a different priority call. So I literally had one cover officer, one person at the car, and one perimeter squad.
Oh, Lord.
And just so everybody's aware, one person can't be a perimeter. You need a lot for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I understand perimeters correctly, but
so I got there and they told me this, and I'm like, there's no way. There's no
right.
If we find this person, it's complete happenstance. Stole a car from a store, took off, got out of the car, ran, last seen this direction, whatever. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to not take the work. I'm not going to not try.
Yeah.
But this is an iffy one, right? Like this is not winnable, right? I would challenge the best canine handler tracking team on the planet to win that one.
Sure.
So our first ever canine track was a complete debauchery. Didn't go well. We didn't find anybody in. But it was easy to chalk up as this was not winnable.
Yeah.
Well, then the next 3 tracks that we had, the very next one, Moose found the guy. And then the next 2, we pushed him out to perimeter cars. So we had 3 wins in a row. Well, we're monsters. We are human tracking machines. And then reality, sunk back in. We started having some unsuccessful finds and unsuccessful tracks and stuff, which it is what it is. But
that is one of the hardest things to understand. For me, anyway, like I went to a building search over in Burnsville. At one point, the 2 canine handlers that were working over there, they used to give me a lot of grief and say that I was their 3rd canine because I spent so much time over there. But you go right from canine school of finding everybody, finding somebody in the building all the time, every time, to you don't find anybody.
Yeah.
Because they're gone.
Yeah.
And how do you wrap your brain around that? And how does the dog wrap their brain around that? Because they have been successful 100% of the time.
Yep.
And then you have to still build up that intensity to continue to go into buildings and search for people. Because if the dog is not getting those wins, they're going to go, oh, well, what am I doing this for? They're not here.
Yep.
Somebody just throw the ball for me. Right? Yeah. So that was the hardest thing for me, was not finding somebody that those first couple of times going, well, this sucks, bro. Like, what do we get into this for? We're not finding anybody. Yeah. And then you have those big wins where this is amazing, and like without this dog, we wouldn't have accomplished this mission or found these people, right? Yeah. And that's the cool part of it.
They're your best friend. But they're also a tool. It's hard to draw the line between pet and working canine. I had to have a very long conversation with everybody close to me, that people that I interact with every day, or people that come to my house all the time. Now I have 4 dogs, right? Yeah. 3 of them are fair game. Do whatever you want, right? Right. Go play with them, pet them, whatever, right? You can cuddle with them on the couch, I don't care. Those are pets, have fun. Moose is not that dog. Moose is not the pet. When people come over to the house, they're not allowed into the basement because that's Moose's area, that's Moose's space.
Sure.
It's super important to remember that they're not your pet. And we talked about this the other day. That line gets muddied as the dog gets older, because now Moose does come up into the house. Well, now Moose does get to jump up on the couch sometimes. Now he does get to get belly rubs and play, and he does get to play with our partners and play with, some of my family members and stuff like that. As where at first it was very structured of Moose only interacts with me. That was kind of my direct assignment when I picked Moose up, is that Moose only interacts with me. Yeah. Straight from the trainers. It was straight from picking the dog up. Is for 2 weeks, for 14 days, nobody but you interacts with this dog. And now that he's getting older, like I said, he can go out into public. He can meet people. He can say hi to people and do things that he couldn't do before. Right. And it gets to be more challenging to be like, this is my working dog, this is my working canine, because he also can do pet things.
Which kind of leads into, we do a lot of demos, and, we let the kids line up. When we go do Panaprog, the canine demo down there, there's 30 kids in line to come up and pet your dog. And the interesting thing about it is kids don't understand body language, right? They will stare at that dog because they are just amazed by what they saw. And the dog goes, "Is that kid staring at? Is that kid challenging me?" Yep. And you're like, just take it easy there, pal. And it's a fine line, because we want the dogs to be calm and stable, and we want them to be able to interact with people. But the hard part is, Virgil knows, he sits on the landing in the house and watches me from there put my uniform on. And he knows when I'm putting my uniform on, he's like, "Oh, dude, we're doing the thing. We're going to work," right? I show up to do a canine demo, and I put on my uniform. He's like, "Hey, we're going to work." Yep. And it's like, "But not today, dude. Just kidding. I'm going to ask you to just be cool when there are 30 kids petting you. Obviously not all at once, but we're going to sit here, and you're just going to be very uncomfortable." And then the interesting thing is, we look at that, and luckily it hasn't happened to us, and it hasn't happened recently with any of our canine canine partners, but there have been accidental bites in the past, right? A couple of years ago at the fire muster, one of the search and rescue dogs tagged a child.
Never trained in biting, never done bite work. Yeah,
but clearly had some anxiety.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, as human beings, we go, well, why would he do that? Why would the dog do that? And we try to apply human logic to an animal, right? Which goes back to it's a wolf at its very core. Like, we don't understand that. And it's just a really interesting dynamic that as handlers, we have to understand. Again, this is one of those things where reading our dogs comes into play big time, because Virgil does a really great job of it. When he's ready to be done at a demo and being pet by kids, he just puts himself in the kennel. He'll like get up and just jump in there. And I'm like, oh, I guess we're done.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a really, really cool thing that I don't know if that's because I've allowed him to do that in the past or whatever that looks like, but it's just a really cool thing that he has, and he does it to me in the house sometimes, where he's like, I need to be away from you.
Yep.
Get away from me.
Yep.
And he goes down into the basement and lays down there.
Yep. Yeah, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
But you hit the nail on the head when you said it's our job to watch the dogs.
Yeah.
Because the dog is always telling you something. You know, nothing should be a surprise, because there's always pre-bite indicators. There's always pre-anxiety indicators. There's always something that you may not be picking up on, but the dog's always telling you something. There's the obvious ones, right? There's the tail tucked between the legs, there's the ears down, there's the hackle standing up. Like, those are the obvious ones that I think everybody should be able to kind of recognize a distressed or angry or aggressive dog. But I start getting it's kind of two-way street. I start losing eye contact, where he doesn't look at me anymore because he's so uncomfortable that he just doesn't want to look at me, doesn't want to make contact.
Yeah.
And adversely, like on the other end, sometimes he'll just stare at me. Just completely intently just stare at me like, Dad, fix this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that K9 Matthews, that dude is always talking about, here's a dog with a wagging tail. And wagging tail doesn't mean they're happy, because then he shows this is what happens. And, it's never pretty when it is a family pet with a wagging tail. And for whatever reason, that dog, and I'm not trying to scare people off of our canines at all, but I think there's a fine art to reading canines, and that's our job, like you say, that's our job. If you are going to get a dog, especially, everybody wants a German Shepherd, everybody wants a Belgian Malinois, Dutch Shepherds, the three main dogs that are used in police or military working dog. We're getting these dogs because they have this drive, and they have a very tough and rigorous selection process that they go through to make it to us, right? Yep. And we have what we call in the canine industry hard dogs. Find a military working dog. They put our police dogs to shame because they are twice as hard as ours. But then think about the breeders out there that are breeding these dogs, and they're selling them to families as family pets.
First-time dog owners, new parents.
Yeah. That's a really intense dog to have as a family pet. Just one of the things that I think they are phenomenal family pets, but again, they have to be given a job. They have to have very clear, defined, what I call a pack order, right? Yeah. I mean, and anybody else would call it that, but inside the home. Yep. That dog has to be at the bottom of the pack.
He needs to understand his role. I remember, I'm terrible with actor names. The movie Dog.
Channing Tatum.
I believe so. Channing Tatum. He gets his buddies like Belgian Malinois and has to bring it from one place to the other. And
and it bites. The dog bites him, like tears up the car.
Yep. And
like any good Mal would.
And that's exactly the caliber of dogs that you're dealing with. They will find and they will create their own outlet to get their anxiety, their frustrations, their energy. Like they will create a stimulus if you don't give them a stimulus. And after that movie, there was, and I don't remember who came out with it, but after that movie, a bunch of people went and got, because the movie's got a happy ending, right? It turns around and the dog turns into be his best friend, and it's this beautiful, great thing, which is possible. But a ton of people went out and they adopted and they rescued and they got Belgian Malinois. Yeah. Well, then there's this huge surge and influx on surrendered Belgian Malinois.
Right.
If you're the person that lives in an apartment and you want a dog to hang out with you while you play video games,
the dog.
That's not the dog for you.
All right.
Go get a bulldog.
Yeah.
I never really looked at it this way. I never really understood this until I started learning more about dogs, but you can tailor your dog to your wants by getting the right dog, getting the right breed, doing your right selection process, determining, is this the super high energy one of the litter, or is this the super lazy one of the litter? Like, that stuff translates. And another thing I find really interesting, like using Moose as an example, and Moose will never be bred, but if Moose is the stud, and there's an equally drivey, equally characteristic, charismatic female, and they mate, in our heads we think, okay, well, we're going to have a litter of police canine caliber dogs.
Right.
So Moose came from Poland, and I don't know any of his siblings, but an average dog litter for dogs that type is, we'll say 8, probably.
Sure.
8 dogs. Just numbers say that Moose is probably the only police canine of that litter.
Right.
Maybe 2 or 3 more, whatever, but there are probably a few of Moose's litter mates, the exact same DNA, that are probably just house pets or sport dogs or search and rescue. There's one that's afraid to bite, that doesn't want to bite anything. There's so much that goes into the selection process of getting a canine. The amount of vetting that's done with your dog before he ever gets sold to us.
Right.
And then I had, in my canine class of 12 people, we had one person get their dog swapped out for a different one because their first dog just wasn't cutting it. It just wasn't doing the thing. Did you have anybody get your dog swapped out?
No.
But it's not uncommon.
Yeah. And we had a much smaller class than yours. There were 6 of us. It's definitely because, again, like Mac or Mark McDonough, he sees that dog, and he's watching. He's only looking at the dog. He really doesn't give a care how we do the thing, unless he's telling us to do something specific. Stand there and hold that leash. Okay. And then he watches the dog.
Yep.
He's like, hey, you're not holding that leash right. Right?
I'm not going to tell you how you're supposed to be doing it, but you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. He's watching the dogs and assessing them constantly through canine school. And if that dog's not cutting it, he's just like, hey, sorry, dude. Like, I know that you're developing a bond with this thing, but we got to swap it out.
Yeah.
And it might be, it's not just because it's lacking drive or it's not doing the thing. It might be too much.
Yeah.
It might be an out of control, like there's no capping the drive, right? And the dog is just not like he gets an NRT for the day. He's not responding to training.
Yep, because there was a single-purpose narcotics dog. I mean, like 2-3 days, it was, this dog isn't the run. Like, right? The dog had no interest in the ball. The dog had no interest in working. The dog was just...
Interesting.
Like, just...
Floppier dog?
Yeah, black lab. 0 cares. Just happy dog, just wanted to go play. Like, this would be the perfect dog for the family of 5.
Yeah.
I want to hang out at the house. I want to go on walks and sleep on the couch. That's all I want. Same thing with handlers. We had that same dog. The handler, the first handler assigned to that dog, showed up for 1 day of class, showed up late, left early, didn't show up the next day.
Oh, I mean, great. Sort it out yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that is one of the biggest things, is this job is not for everybody. It requires a new level of patience that anybody who has kids would understand that level of patience probably fairly well. The cool part about kids is that they don't always bite you. So let's talk about trainings for our canine training group. You and I were talking about this offline earlier a little bit, and how what ends up happening is, if you're a part of our training group, if you have the space and the ability to host, it rotates monthly, and so we ask the handler from that city to come up with scenarios and venues to do those sorts of things. For us here in Apple Valley, we have established some really good relationships with the businesses around here. You got us into the IMAX theater that is no longer an IMAX theater, but you developed that relationship with staff and security up there that they allowed us to use that building for training. Dix Valley Service allows us to, if they have abandoned vehicles, they allow us to hide drugs on those cars.
Chuck and Don's.
Chuck and Don's, yeah. Chuck and Don's is great. They also are fantastic in that they allow us to bring our dogs in there and give them baths when they need it, which is fantastic. We've also done Dog Day Getaway, but we were talking about Eden Prairie. They've had some really phenomenal trainings that are like handler focused. It's not about the dog, which I think is important, because those guys give us a really good look at a real life deployment, right? What happens if your cover officer gets shot? How do you react? What do you do with your dog?
There's kind of two different boats as far as what to do with your canine training. There's handler-centered trainings, and then there's dog-centered trainings.
Right.
I personally set up a lot of scenarios that are very testing the dog, not so much testing the handler. I don't focus on handler tactics in my trainings, in the scenarios that I set up. A lot of the scenarios that I come up with are very, very dog oriented. We could have a group of people come in, stand around in a picture that the dog would never see, right? We would never have one handler and 7, we'll call them cover officers, just standing there watching the dog in real life. It's just that's not what it would look like. But again, I'm testing the dog to make sure the dog is willing to do the environmental thing. Mm-hmm. Whether it climb up a set of stairs that you can see through, or punch out of sight to work out of sight, out of direct line of sight, not direct control of the handler. It's a lot of very unrealistic as far as like real life deployment goes, but very applicable as far as your dog is going to have to work past X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Using Chuck and Don's as an example, these dogs that we have are so alpha. Other dogs' odor is probably one of the highest distractors.
Yeah, absolutely.
So getting into Chuck and Don's, where there is dog odor and dog food odor, and there's so many things to distract them. Mm-hmm. The scenario that we set up was basically working through that. We set up narcotics in that area. And I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody, but I work a lot around distractions to make sure my dog is focused, is task-oriented and focused on what he's doing. He could not care any less about dog food, dog treats, whatever around.
Unless it's salmon and it's in the squad.
Correct. Specifically freeze-dried salmon.
Right.
And he just loses his mind for it. But we set out a narcotics sniff in that room in the dog food. Like we put it with, I don't know how many hundreds of bags of dog food they have. Mm-hmm. It was super fun to watch because Moose ran in, did the distinct change in behavior, the complete body head snap, boom, there it is. Found it in 10 seconds. Yeah. Versus some dogs that have never seen that picture before. Right. That went in there and they're just kind of in awe of there's food. There's never food and drugs. Right. The IMAX theater, again, that one was super cool. We just had a passive decoy just sitting in a seat. We could see him, but your dog is, 2.5 feet off the ground. He can't see over all those seats. He can get on odor, but the odor is so...
It's moving around in there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so pooled, and so it's so different that they have to walk down the right aisle to get to him. A picture of the dog I'd never seen before. And again, those are very much for the dogs. The one you set up in Mill's house was super cool too, where you had a high hide, which it's challenging for dogs to find things above them. And it's not hard for them to find it. Your dog just wants to pinpoint it.
Yeah, that odor falls. Mm-hmm. And so the dog runs around and goes, well, what do you mean the odor's here? Mm-hmm. Where's the person? Yeah. If I look up, oh, cool. There it is. There's the guy. Yeah. Hey, throw me that ball now. Right?
So they'll instantly tell you, if you're reading the dog, they'll instantly tell you that they're there, that they're on odor, that there's a person there. But you have to let your dog work through the actual final alert. Again, what that looks like in training versus what that looks like in real life are two vastly different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
In real life, I'm going to take that information of him telling me he's there, and I'm going to start assessing and addressing that situation. Right. In training, it's letting your dog work through the problem and work through, it's right there. Because the dog isn't going to alert until they have a definitive source.
And the interesting thing, there's so much input from the handler in training. Like on a narcotic search, if you're connected to the dog via the leash and they look back at you, they're going, is this it? Is this the place? Is this what I'm supposed to? Versus do it off leash and you let them search the room and you just stand there with your arms crossed and don't even look at them until they sit. Mm-hmm. There's no input there from you, right? There's no, because the dog starts cueing off the handler. And the reason I like these, the dog-centric trainings is because a lasting impression is created when the dog figures out and solves a problem on their own. And I think that's important because we are building dogs that, for lack of better term, learn how to problem solve for themselves. Yeah. Almost like the velociraptors in Jurassic Park where they figure out how to open the door, which some dogs do figure out how to open doors and gain entry into places where you're like, oh no.
Mm-hmm. We're at 3 dead doors so far. Moose has destroyed 3 doors to go through them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The decoy thinks this is a toy alert, and he's just gonna toss a ball out when the dog's alerting. Yeah. Yeah. Moose has other plans. He goes through doors, interior doors, right? He's not going through a big external door, but internal bedroom doors and stuff like that. He'll just go straight through it.
You mean like the sliders at businesses where they just walk up and? Because that's the only one that Virgil's going through. But he's probably kind of scared of it when it opens on its own.
What was that?
Who the hell did that for me? Oh, man.
And then
I make fun of that dog.
The opposite side of that is the Eden Prairie, very handler-centric trainings that they put on. Yeah. Those are the ones that are going to save your life.
Absolutely.
That's the important part.
Yeah.
Is keeping us safe.
Yeah, which is one of the hardest things. When I do the new officer K9 presentation, one of the things, and I think you do the same, right? When we talk about like, hey, if my dog is biting bad guy and bad guy is shooting at us, don't wait for a clear shot. Like we have to eliminate that threat, and that sucks because our dog is in the way.
Yeah.
Could be potentially in the way.
Yeah.
And to treat them like a tool in that sense, ultimately, they are a tool to keep officers safe.
Yeah. And that's the way that I can justify sending him into some scary situations. If Moose's role, Virgil's role in this police department in life is ultimately to keep officers safe, keep the public safe, and find things.
Yes.
In that, keeping people safe is number one, finding things is number two.
Yeah.
With that being said, if Moose has to die at work to keep somebody safe, he lived a valiant life.
Yeah.
He served his purpose, and he did exactly what his job was.
Right.
None of us want that to happen. But if we get to play God for a day and we get to choose who gets hurt, it's going to be the dog.
Yeah.
So, and that's his job, that's his role. And I think that's the overlooked part of K9. Their job, their role, their purpose is strictly and exclusively to keep people safe.
With that being said, neither of us are sending our dogs to a certain death.
Correct.
Right? Like there's other tools that we have if we absolutely have to, right? If no other tool and we absolutely need to send the dog on this and we know that, chances of survival are slim, that's a terrible day. Yep. And I'm just thankful that thus far, knock on wood, I haven't been forced to make that decision.
Yeah.
Everything that I've been able to do has been safe for both me and the dog.
Yeah. And it comes down to the love you, buddy.
Yeah.
Do your thing. If you could tell your partners and the public one thing that you want them to know about Virgil, what would it be? His favorite cushion?
Yeah, right. I mean, he lives a very different life than Moose. Right now he's running free in the house. He's probably curled up on the pet bed next to Murphy. They've been sleeping, like touching each other a lot lately.
Just happy.
Which is cool. The one thing that I always love to tell people about Virgil is that his nickname is Butters. Because he goes bonkers for butter. He has stolen 2 sticks of butter off the counter. He doesn't counter surf unless it's butter. I've rescued 1 stick, complete with tooth marks in it.
Still used it,
obviously. It's a good stick of butter. Just has, it has a big canine fang impression in it. It's fine.
Softened it. It's nice.
Yeah. What about Moose? What's the one thing that you want the public to know about Moose?
He does have a gangster canine. He's got the titanium tooth.
Yeah, he's got a grill. Mm-hmm. Just one. Yeah, he busted his teeth up, not even in a cool way. He's so hard and intent on what he's doing that we're sitting in a conference room right now. If I just roll the ball across the floor, all of these chairs and all of these tables would be flipped and that TV would be over there somewhere. Yeah.
It's just
obviously.
Just love salmon.
Man, could you imagine the one way to defeat these dogs?
Yeah, carry freeze-dried salmon everywhere.
Or a stick of butter. Probably don't carry that stick of butter. That's just good odor for him to.
That's just a guarantee.
He will find you for sure. The best part about him eating an entire stick of butter, iron gut for that dog, never affected his digestive system at all.
Perfect. I wish I could say the same about mine.
Yeah. Okay.
I ate my food too fast. I'm going to puke. Man.
We have talked ad nauseum about canine stuff. I just want to say, shout out to everybody in our canine training group for South Metro Canine, because all of the people that show up, including our decoys, we absolutely love working with those guys. We love having this team, especially the way it has come into its own in terms of how we train. Just want to say that without that canine training group, Alex and I wouldn't be the handlers that we are.
Yeah.
Right. And that if we didn't mention you specifically here, it's not indicative of how we feel about your training, because everybody always has phenomenal trainings for us.
It would certainly take a little bit of the passion out of it if we didn't have that group and have that opportunity.
Yeah.
It's just
yeah.
The relationships built and
Well, I think that'll do it for this episode of The Buzz with the Fuzz. Alex, thank you very much for joining me. My assumption is you're going to head straight out to the squad and feed Moose a handful of freeze-dried salmon.
At least a couple bits.
Good. Good. All right. If you see our squads out there, you'll know it's us. They're marked with K9 all over it. They say caution, stay back. The dogs might bark at you, but come on up and say hi to us. We'd love to talk dog with you.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Alex.
Appreciate it.
Hey, folks, we want this to be engaging for you as well, so please drop a comment wherever you follow us on social media. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to this podcast. Tell your friends, tell your family. We'd like to get this out to as many people as possible. We want people to know who the police officers of Apple Valley are. If you have questions or comments, something you'd like to hear about, reach out to us. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to address some of those topics that you guys have questions about as well. We look forward to having you back next time.